Hi everyone, I'm David Kelly, Program Director for the eLearning Guild, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to another Twist Conversation. Today I'm pleased to be welcoming Ajay Pangarkar from CentralKnowledge.com, and we're going to be talking about business skills for trainers. Welcome, Ajay.
Hi, David.
Thanks so much for joining us. Before we get started on our conversation, why don't you take a moment to introduce yourself to our viewers?
Well, thank you for having me. I always love chatting with the eLearning Guild and about learning solutions, so I'm really looking forward to this. Myself, I'm basically a consultant in learning strategy. My specialty is not necessarily developing learning, although we can do that. What I really focus on is on the accountability of learning within the organization and how that ties in to the company's objectives and, of course, their expectations of what they want learning to deliver to the results of the organization as a whole.
So that's a unique conversation that you're leading within the space. I know most people, when they think about professional development for people in the training and e-learning world, they're thinking about design skills, development skills, but you don't often hear the importance of business skills. And I know that that's something that you're passionate about. Why do you feel that business skills are so important for trainers and e-learning developers?
Well, you're right, David. We always hear about the ADDIE formula, right? So we're hired in the companies to do what we do best. That is, of course, develop learning solutions or learning initiatives. And granted, that's what we're there for. However, the business component and of it has become very essential for organizations to achieve. Now, we're probably going to talk about accountability, but the word accountability comes up too often, and more often than not. Learning is one of those areas where money gets put in, and it's still a business unit, but there has to be some accountability out of it. So a lot of your business leaders will look at learning as just another business function. And when they put money into it, they want to see what kind of output will help them achieve their objective. And essentially, that's the importance of the business component in all of this. And I don't want, I know people will argue with me on this, and well, we're learning professionals, and this is what we're hired to do. I don't want to take that away from them. They're absolutely right. The problem is we have to account as a business function within the organization, and basically that's why it's so important.
So we're accountable within the business as a unit of the business. We want to position ourselves as a partner within the business, and we want to be able to have credible conversations with business leaders that are related to the business metrics. But there's a pretty wide scope of skills and knowledge and skills related to being in the business. It could be something as simple as knowing how to use an Excel worksheet, or something as complicated that you might need an MBA in order to participate in that level of a conversation. And that's a pretty wide scope. So where do you see the skill set, specifically what type of skills do learning professionals need as it relates to business skills and having those conversations?
Well, let's keep this simple. I like to illustrate the fact that there's two levels of understanding that a learning professional must have, and it also depends on where they are in that design and development process of the learning initiative. But simply put, there's two levels that people have to understand in general. One is the learning strategy and how it connects to the organizational strategy. And those are bigger picture items. We always refer to that as what we call, in our space, of course, level 4, Kirkpatrick's level 4, which is business impact. And that's the big picture item. Where we get dragged into, of course, is the operational issues. And the operational issues are the everyday items that are key. Now, operational items, of course, in the Kirkpatrick levels, we refer to as level 3 typically. How do those skills that we've entrenched in the employees apply to the job to be able to change behaviors, to be able to achieve performance metrics? Now, those are the simple two levels that we have to look at, and that's how all business leaders communicate. They don't understand the rest of the stuff we do, and they're not intended to understand what we do. That's our specialty. So yes, you can look at Excel spreadsheets and you can decide, some of the business components in there that apply to learning. But at the same time, that's not what our intention. Our intention is basically how do we partner with the business unit? How do we achieve their performance objectives? And how do we make a change in the organization? Because that's exactly what learning is trying to do, is make a change for the better or for some improvement. And as long as we can focus on those issues, those business issues, we don't have to know everything in business, but at least have an understanding of some of the core components and understand what is the big picture items and what are the operational items.
So you mentioned in both the flavor in both of the questions I've asked so far, you've mentioned the word accountability, which I think is a big part of what we need to be doing as learning professionals is being accountable for the work that we do and making sure that it makes sense. And you also talked about metrics and things that we have to be reportable and accountable for. And generally speaking, the metrics that learning and development and training has provided are our metrics about how many people completed a course, or how many people, what the satisfaction level was, and things that really aren't business metrics. And I know accountability and the metrics behind them are something that you're very passionate about. So what do you see as being the ways that learning and development should be held accountable within a business unit?
There's a couple of things. One is that, let me just step back a bit, David, to just explain something to the audience. One is that we're in a great position. I mentioned this a lot in my sessions that I speak at and the articles that I write. But we live in an age where your business leaders need this learning function to operate effectively. So believe it or not, the business leaders in the organizations, from the mid-level management all the way to the senior level, sees the learning function, or the knowledge function, if you want to put it at a broader context. They see that at the top of their to-do list only because companies either have to be innovative or have to defend against innovation, and they have to be creative. And so survival in the business unit requires our competencies. It requires our knowledge. Now, this goes back, to go back to your question is, well, how do we connect into that? Well, there's something in the last 25 years has been put into place. It's called, a performance management framework. A lot of people may recognize the terms balanced scorecard, but there's a bunch of them out there. But they essentially do the same thing. They measure an organization's performance and how they achieve their ultimate objective, which is the company's mission. Now, I don't want to get too complicated on this, but keep things simple. If you take this down to the lowest level of organization, you should be able to improve the performance of each employee and what they need to focus on, so what we refer to as key performance indicators or key performance metrics, and focus on those areas that will lead to an organization where they want to go. And guess what? In that framework, there's a component called learning and growth, or learning and innovation. And that's where we fit in. No, there's not been a time in history before that learning has played such a prominent role. And we're ignoring it for some reason. We're not accepting that we have a role in this to make things happen. In that framework, we have very specific metrics, not our own. And you mentioned, David, we have our own metrics that we look at. What we call butts and seats, or if they like the buffet, or the instructor was great looking. I'm sorry, I'm being a little light about this, but I think you get the point. We look at the learning function, and did they retain this information? Did they remember it? It's not about remembering. It is about applying it, and is it managing the performance? So simply put, I say to people, look at your performance management framework. Be proactive about it. Don't be reactive. Go up to a business unit and say, hey, we're the learning function. You have some performance measures you need to attain. How can we help you make that happen? How can we improve your people? And how, what are those objectives that we need to help you achieve? You tie into those business metrics, and let me say in short, you'll look like heroes.
I know you're going to be taking a deeper dive into this topic at Learning Solutions this March in a workshop, and I love the title of the workshop, Building Business Skills to Empower the Training Function. And I think that's so appropriate, the fact that we, by adding this to your skill set, you're really going to be able to empower the work that you do, because you'll be more of a partner. So if I'm going to be attending your workshop at Learning Solutions this March, can you give me an idea of what my experience is going to be like as we take a deeper dive into business skills for training?
Well, people first of all, they get intimidated by that title, and I don't want them to. First of all, it's kept at a very fundamental level. I'm not trying to make people MBA experts here. They were hired for one thing, to be very good learning professionals. That being said, what we will address in this session is basically three fundamental things. One, we look at the financial component. So, David, you mentioned before the Excel spreadsheets. Well, your business leaders look at reams of Excel spreadsheets, and they look at things like what we call accounting, cost, volume, profit, or net present value, and all these things sound really intimidating and a little complicated. But what I try to demonstrate is, how does learning fit into it, and how does it impact these financial decisions that your business leaders at any level has to make? So we look at that, and we actually play with an activity in an Excel spreadsheet to show that happening and how it impacts the decision-making process from a business leader's perspective. Second, we look at the performance management framework that I talked about before. We talk about, okay, let's look at the performance management framework. What are those key metrics we need to identify. How do we identify them? How do we tie in, gain buy-in for your learning solution? So you can go through all this process, but every single level within the organization, all your business leaders, from the lower level manager all the way to the CEO, have different requirements when they buy into learning. Even down to the employees, they have a decision-making process if they're going to buy into your learning initiative. And we address those issues. So we look at those three areas: the financial, how to manage the financial requirements for the organization, not necessarily your financial requirements, but how does learning fit into it? Second, the performance framework. And finally, how to gain buy-in for your learning initiative when you're trying to sell it internally.
Excellent. Well, it sounds like a great overview that people can use to develop these skills and position themselves as more of a partner within their organization. If you want to learn more about the workshop that AJ was just talking about, please do visit our website, learningsolutions15.com. The Learning Solutions Conference and Expo takes place March 25th through 27th in Orlando, Florida, and it's co-located with Ecosystem 2015. Registration is currently open, and all the details about AJ's workshop and all the other workshops are currently online. So visit our website, learningsolutions15.com. AJ, I want to thank you so much for spending some time talking to me about business skills for trainers today. Can you hear me, sir?
Sorry, David, you just froze up there for a second. I apologize.
Oh, that's okay. I was just saying thank you, so I wanted to thank you so much for chatting with me today.
Well, thank you very much, David, for having me. And if you don't mind me saying, if people want pre-reading, they can look at some of the books that we've written on it, the Trainer's Balanced Scorecard, and of course, the Building Business Acumen for Trainers. So I hope that helps them out.
Excellent. Thank you so much, and thank you for chatting with us today, and thank you for watching. We'll see you next time online during a Twist conversation or this March at Learning Solutions in Orlando. Take care, everybody.